into conversation. All he remarked was that we had fallen into queer company and that those who supped with Satan needed a long spoon. Having delivered himself of this sentiment, he threw himself upon the bed, prayed aloud for a while as had become his fashion, to be protected from warlocks and witches, amongst other things, and went to sleep. Before I turned in I visited Umslopogaas' room to see that all was well with him and his people, and found him standing in the doorway staring at the star-spangled sky. "Greeting, Macumazahn," he said, "you who are white and wise and I am black and a fighter, have seen many strange things beneath the sun, but never such a one as we have looked upon tonight. Who and what is that chieftainess, Macumazahn?" "I do not know," I said, "but it is worth while to have lived to see her, even though she is veiled." "Nor do I, Macumazahn. Nay, I do know, for my heart tells me that she is the greatest of all witches and that you will do well to guard your spirit lest she should steal it away. If she were not a witch should I have seemed to behold the shape of Nada the Lily who was the wife of my youth, beneath those white robes of hers, and though the tongue in which she spoke was strange to me, to hear the murmur of Nada's voice between her lips, of Nada who has gone further from me than those stars. It is good that you wear the great medicine of Zikali upon your breast, Macumazahn, for perhaps it will shield you from harm at those hands that are shaped of ivory." "Zikali is another of the tribe," I answered laughing, "although less beautiful to see. Also I am not afraid of any of them, and from this one, if she be more than some white woman whom it pleases to veil herself, I shall hope to gather wisdom." "Yes, Macumazahn, such wisdom as spirits and the dead have to give." "Mayhap, Umslopogaas, but we came here to seek spirits and the dead, did we not?" "Aye," answered Umslopogaas, "these and war, and I think that we shall find enough of all three. Only I hope that war will come the first, lest the spirits and the dead should bewitch me and take away my skill and courage." Then we parted and too tired even to wonder any more, I threw myself down on my bed and slept. I was awakened when the sun was already high, by the sound of Robertson, who was on his knees, praying aloud as usual, a habit of his which I confess got on my nerves. Prayer, in my opinion, is a private matter between man and his Creator, that is, except in church. Further, I did not in the least wish to hear all about Robertson's sins, which seemed to have been many and peculiar. It is bad enough to have to bear the burden of one's own transgressions without learning of those of other people, that is, unless one is a priest and must do so professionally. So I jumped up to escape and make arrangements for a wash, only to butt into old Billali, who was standing in the doorway contemplating Robertson with much interest and stroking his white beard. He greeted me with his courteous bow and said, "Tell your companion, O Watcher, that it is not necessary for him to go upon his knees to she who commands and must be obeyed," he added with emphasis, "when he is not in her presence, and that even then he would do well to keep silent, since so much talking in a strange tongue might trouble her." I burst out laughing and answered, "He does not go upon his knees and pray to She who commands, but to the Great One who is in the sky." "Indeed, Watcher. Well, here we only know a Great One who is upon the earth, though it is true that perhaps she visits the sky sometimes." "Is it so, Billali?" I answered incredulously. "And now I would ask you to take me to some place where I can bathe." "It is ready," he replied. "Come." So I called to Hans, who was hanging about with a rifle on his arm, to follow with the cloth and soap, of which fortunately we had a couple of pieces left, and we started along what had once been a paved roadway running between stone houses, whereof the time-eaten ruins still remained on either side. "Who and what is this queen of yours, Billali?" I asked as we went. "Surely she is not of the Amahagger blood?" "Ask it of herself who watched her, for I cannot tell you. All I know is that I can trace my own family for 10 generations, and that my 10th forefather told his son on his deathbed, for the saying has come down through his descendants, that when he was young, she who commands had ruled the land for more scores of years than he could count months of life." I stopped and stared at him, since the lie was so amazing that it seemed to deprive me of the power of motion. Noting my very obvious disbelief, he continued blandly, "If you doubt, ask. And now here is where you may bathe." Then he led me through an arched doorway and down a wrecked passage to what very obviously once had been a splendid bath house, such as some I have seen pictures of that were built by the Romans. Its size was that of a large room. It was constructed of a kind of marble with a sloping bottom that varied from 3 to 7 feet in depth, and water still ran in and out of it through large glazed pipes. Moreover, round it was a footway about 5 feet across, from which opened chambers unroofed now, that the bathers used as dressing rooms, while between these chambers stood the remains of statues. One at the end indeed, where an alcove had protected it from sun and weather, was still quite perfect, except for the outstretched arms which were gone. The right hand I noticed lying at the bottom of the bath. It was that of a nude young woman in the attitude of diving, a very beautiful bit of work I thought, though of course I am no judge of sculpture. Even the smile, mingled with trepidation, upon the girl's face was most naturally portrayed. This statue showed me two things, that the bath was used by females and that the people who built it were highly civilized, also that they belonged to an advanced if somewhat Eastern race, since the girl's nose was if anything Semitic in character, and her lips, though prettily shaped, were full. For the rest the basin was so clean that I presume it must have been made ready for me or other recent bathers, and at its bottom I discovered gratings and broken pipes of earthenware, which suggested that in the old days the water could be warmed by means of furnace. This relic of a long past civilization excited Hans even more than it did myself, since having never seen anything of the sort, he thought it so strange that, as he informed me, he imagined that it must have been built by witchcraft. In it I had a most delightful and much needed bath. Even Hans was persuaded to follow my example, a thing I had rarely known him to do before, and seated in its shallowed part, splashed some water over his yellow, wrinkled anatomy. Then we returned to our house, where I found an excellent breakfast had been provided, which was brought to us by tall, silent, handsome women, who surveyed us out of the corners of their eyes but said nothing. Shortly after I had finished my meal, Billali, who had disappeared, came back again and said that she who commands desired my presence as she would speak with me, also that I must come alone. So after attending to the wounded, who both seemed to be getting on well, I went, followed by Hans armed with his rifle, though I only carried my revolver. Robertson wished to accompany me as he did not seem to care about being left alone with the Zulus in that strange place. But this Billali would not allow. Indeed, when he persisted, two great men stepped forward and crossed their spears before him in a somewhat threatening fashion. Then at my entreaty, for I feared lest trouble should arise, he gave in and returned to the house. Following our path of the night before, we walked up a ruined street, which I could see was only one of scores in what had once been a very great city. until we came to the archway that I have mentioned, a large one